Well, let's see what we think about the last album of the night, Ween and the Mollusk. In the opening montage, you heard Ocean Man, and now you're going to hear the Mollusk. Okay, Matt, what are the stats?
The Mollusk by Ween comes in at number 95 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 13 in 1997, number 539 of all time. It is Ween's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Ween is ranked number 236 of overall artists' rankings on Best Ever Albums.
I don't know what Ween fans are called, but I'm going to call them Weeniacs because I just thought of that. It's funny.
Ween heads.
Weenies.
Weenies, yeah, that's a good one.
This album came out June 24th, 1997. Ween was formed in 1984 in New Hope, Pennsylvania by members Aaron Freeman and Mickey Melchiondo, known by their stage names Gene Ween and Dean Ween. This is our first time covering them. They have 9 studio albums, and this is the 6th. Genres include experimental rock, alt or indie rock, and comedy rock. Broadly, their influences, they said, were whatever was in the home record collections they had, psychedelia, punk rock, new wave, Prince. Some of the other influences they've cited are the Beatles, Devo, Pink Floyd, Butthole Surfers, and The Residents. Similar artists, King Missile, They Might Be Giants, Flaming Lips, Guided by Voices, Camper Van Beethoven, Primus, and Tenacious D. Couldn't find any Billboard chart info, but I saw a reference that their highest charting single was Push the Little Daisies off of their Pure Guava record. Some fun facts. The name Ween was made up by the two of them in junior high, and it's a combination of wuss and penis. And thought you guys would find that funny.
Of course it is, yes. Yep.
From 84 to 94, their live act consisted of the two of them and a DAT machine playing pre-recorded backing tracks. They also were pretty lo-fi, and they released 6 self-released cassettes in the 80s of their music. Their debut album was for the indie label Twin Tone, and it was called God Ween Satan, The Oneness. Their major label debut was on Elektra, and that was Pure Guava. That got them on Beavis and Butthead, as well as playing at MTV Spring Break in Daytona Beach, which I thought was humorous. The Mollusk is a nautical themed concept album. I don't know if you picked up on that. Freeman said, quote,
I definitely picked up on that.
Yeah. Freeman said, quote, describing the album, quote, our dark acid rock record, and they both cited it as their favorite album that they did. In 1998, they voiced themselves on the South Park episode Chef Aid. For South Park, they recorded a folk pop song about homosexuality called The Rainbow, and this song appeared on the Chef Aid episode and on the soundtrack album based on that episode titled Chef Aid, the South Park album. Trey and Parker and Matt Stone are huge fans of Ween, it turns out, as I read about them. The Mollusk was a direct influence on the animated television series SpongeBob SquarePants. Steven Hillenburg, who is the show's creator, contacted the band shortly after the album's release and requested a song from them, which later became Loop de Loop. And the track Ocean Man is played at the end of the end credits of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. That was after my time growing up. I think that's kind of the generation after me, that kids who liked SpongeBob. Other personnel on this album are Dave Drywitz on bass. He's been their bassist from 97 to 2024. Glenn McClelland on keyboards and Claude Coleman Jr. on percussion. They've also been the longtime members of the band when they as well. They broke up from 2011 to 2015, and then they reunited in 2015 for live performances, but there was no new material since that reunion. And then in August 2024, Ween announced that they would stop touring for the foreseeable future, citing concerns over Dean Ween's mental health, and the band emphasized the need to prioritize personal well-being over live performances. So the band seems like they're at least on hiatus, maybe, broken up for good. They've been doing it for a long time at this point. So that's what I have on Ween. I am very interested to talk about this album with you guys. So let's start with Matt. What did you think of the Mollusk?
Yeah, band I've heard of, known of for many, many years. don't really know it. I know a song "Roses Are Free" because it's a staple Fish song that they cover during their live sets, but never really. And I always remember the album cover of "Chocolate and Cheese,"
Yes,
with the woman with the showing the bottoms of her boobs. That just kind of sticks in your head when you see it. So, and I know that they're kind of goofy, right? That they're like,
right.
What did you say? Comedy? What genre is
Comedy
that?
rock.
Comedy rock. Okay, so I was kind of like, and I've heard John like go ugh when he hears of Ween. So
Yeah.
I was kind of like thinking that this is all right. This is probably like another. Oh gosh, who was that band? They Might Be Giants. Yes, right. Mm-hmm. So, which is an album we covered them, and I remember, generally liking it, but like it's just, it's kind of there, getting it's a little kitschy and whatnot.
Yep.
And so when the opening track came on for this, I'm dancing in the show tonight. It's like, oh boy, here we go. Like it's like
exactly what I thought.
I was like, all right, let's see what happened, and then it gets awesome. Like this album, I love this. Every song that came on after that, I was like, well, this is totally different than what I just heard. And it's also really freaking interesting and catchy, or like the production is cool, or it's like unique, and it's just I was just throughout it. I'm like, okay, now I'm on track 7 and 8 and 9, and it's like I like this song, I like that song. So I like this from the get-go, and there's moments on it that it's like not as much. Like it's kind of like the pink eye on my leg was kind of like barking. The dog barking, and then like the last minute of that song, I don't think that you need, but leading up to that, I was like, I liked the production sound of it, right? And then waving my dick in the wind as soon as I saw the title, that I just laughed. I was like, what is this? So it's not like those are the songs that stood out, but like, gosh, there's so the sound of this, there's lots of psychedelia in here, right?
Yep.
This reminded me of one of the numerous albums we covered in the 60s. So I could definitely, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I know, like there's certain things on this is like a Moody Blues kind of sound, right? Or whatever. This is kind of just like a psychedelic nature of some of the other, songs here. Certainly reminiscent of that. There's definitely, in stuff like, the Blarney Stone is kind of it's interesting because it's like some of these songs are so just kind of goofy, and it's like like the Blarney Stone's kind of this ridiculous song, but damn if that's not like a catchy song, like this old Irish kind of, sea shanty, right? It's like this
Irish drinking song.
Irish drinking song, and it's got this, I don't know who sings that. It sounds like a totally different voice. So I don't know if they're just throwing their voices or they get somebody in to sing that, but so they got stuff like that, or they've got like almost songs that sound like more serious, like Cold Blows the Wind, that's like these kind of like acoustic, almost kind of like Decemberists kind of like songs, like these folk type songs that are just melodically really good, really interesting. I really liked It's Gonna Be All Right. That was another one that kind of fit in that realm. And then you've got a song like Mutilated Lips, which is like I don't know if that's a good. I really liked, like, it was just interesting, right? And he's kind of like, is he rapping over it? It's just, what am I making of this song? And so that kind of thought came in here and there, and I'm just like, man, they are all over the place with this record. But for me, it kind of fits. It flows really well. It keeps you on your toes. And there's not really anything on here that I'm like, I hate that song, right?
Yep.
And most of the songs I'm like, I really like that. So I don't know. I was like, the first time I listened to it, I was in the car on the way to work, and I'm just like, I'm smiling at the beginning of each song. I'm like, okay, I like this one too. Is that like when's the dead weight gonna hit? And for me, it never really did. And Buckingham Green had a great, that guitar part at they do this really elaborate produced rock out guitar sound that just is it's just really really good. So I don't know, so this is something that Ween, I don't know if this is representative of their other catalog, of their other albums. I could see myself probably listening to another Ween album and maybe hating it or not, or being like, oh man, they did it's not the same as the Mollusk, but damn, if I didn't really, this is one of those albums that, we've covered that like totally blindsides me, right, with how much I like it. And because of that, it's one of the more, it's it's kind of my album of the week, just because, I mean, I like the Goldfinger record, but this was just because of the variety and how surprised I was with how much it hit with me. I was like, I love this record. It's a big thumbs up for me. Yeah, I'm curious as to John's take, but for my money, I definitely would recommend this one.
Yeah, John, did Ween win you over?
So I'll kind of start by so Ween grew up in the shadow of where I did. So New Hope, Pennsylvania is very close to where I grew up in Trenton.
I saw they played in Trenton a lot when I was reading.
Oh, they played City Gardens all the time. They would play like John and Peters like in New Hope, and so like yes, I was always aware of Ween because they were like sort of a local band near us, right? And so I always have known Ween as like a mix of three different things. One is I always process them at their core as like a parody band. Yes. Like that's to some degree and that's why, the Trey Parker and the Matt Stones of the world like them. Whereas like They Might Be Giants is, I wouldn't call them a parody band. They're like kind of like an art rock band that is also nerd adjacent, I would say. Like when you take, it's kind of like the difference between like what Ween is and like what SpongeBob becomes, where it's like charming stuff, whereas like Ween has more edge, right? They're a little, I mean, you're not playing City Gardens if you're like SpongeBob, right? So there's that. Number two, I always have known that Ween are good musicians because they listen to everything, right? And their tastes are across the board, right? So that the fact that this album had lots of interesting musical choices didn't surprise me. And also, like, then the third thing is you kind of never know, is this going to be a serious thing or not with them in terms of what they're going for, I would say. And because of that, Ween has some stuff I really hate. Like, it's just the choices they make. Although, like, I've rolled my eyes, Matt, with them because some of the choices they make deliberate choices. Right?
Oh,
and
sure.
It just, I don't like them. It doesn't mean, though, that unlike They Might Be Giants, which hits my ear, or even like 10cc, who we covered, some of the stuff they did, I'm like, I outwardly hate this, right? Like it's more, or like Bare Naked Ladies, right? Like stuff that, is in that like nerd rock adjacent. I would say my dislike of the stuff that Ween does is less I dislike it musically as much as I dislike what they're going for a little bit, and a little bit of parody goes a long way for me and stuff like that. So I actually have never listened to this album. I'm more familiar with a lot of the albums that came before this. And I first look at the cover of this, I started laughing, and I'm like, I have a feeling I know what they're going for in this, knowing their taste. And then the first track came on, I'm like, oh, I guess I have it wrong, and I'm like, oh, this is all the stuff I don't like about me. So Matt, similar to you, I'm like, we'll see. And I knew there would be stuff that, like, I knew I wouldn't hate everything, right? Like, and I was like, oh, this is going to be one of the tracks I don't like. And then I'm listening to this, and I get like 7 songs into it, and I'm like, this is a fucking parody of a prog rock album. Like, this is clearly a like fucking prog rock joke. Like, that's what they're going for with this, all the way down to the picture and calling it the mollusk, the genre choices they're making, right? I'm like, they're putting a fucking sea shanty on here, right? With like Blarney Stone, but it's a profane, like to instead of all the stuff, and this is where I can vibe with Ween a little bit, because sea shanties, I fucking hate them, and my guess is that Ween probably equal parts hates and likes them, like at different things. So they wrote a faithful sea shanty, but it's a fucking totally unsentimental, like gross version of a sea shanty, which is kind of funny. So that won me over a little bit. There's definitely a couple songs that I would call like Frank Zappa doing prog rock, which made me laugh, because it's prog rock lyricism mixed with like the layout of the song, but the take that Frank Zappa would do with it. So that kind of made me chuckle a little bit, no more than like Buckingham Green, which is a pure parody song. And I know, Matt, you're processing these for the music, and they are really talented mimics of music styles. I mean, like, It's Gonna Be All Right is this like great synthy 80s song that's a legitimately great song, right? And it's like a song I'd listen to on my own, and there aren't a lot of those from Ween. So I was like, but once again, it didn't surprise me that they could do that, because I know what their record collection looks like, and
Yeah.
I know it looks similar to mine, right? And I know that they're pretty funny guys, but I also know that sometimes they push the humor in ways that are cringe-inducing to me, right? But I actually I wouldn't say I found myself getting won over by this album. I found myself amused by the whole concept of this album and just the general premise of like parodying a prog rock album by doing prog rock type songs like within all the genres that they like, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of soul, a little bit of like experimental rock, there's a little bit of noise rock here, there's a little bit of like 80s synth, on this, there's a little bit of power pop, and then they're doing genres that I don't think they necessarily like as much, but they're within the concept of what to show that they can do it, right? Within the concept of a prog rock. So because I enjoyed, even calling the album The Mollusk made me laugh because it's like such a clear choice, and the mollusk on there looks like vaguely medieval. So, I mean, I was on to what they were going for pretty quickly on this. And, Ocean Man is funny. It's almost like I don't want to say like Randy, it's almost like a Harry Nilsson song, like in terms of what that sounds like. So I was amused by this album quite a bit. I knew in listening to this, I'm like, oh, Matt and Josh are both gonna really like this album. Like and they're gonna like it like unironically, whereas part of my like of this is much more ironic. I don't know with Josh. I don't want to talk for. I think Josh might have got a little bit more of the irony on this. If I knew Matt, you would love this unironically, which kind of made me smile. And because Matt's gonna, I said to myself at one point, I said, Matt's gonna say this album sounds great, but not like, in my opinion, processing that like part of the humor of them laughing behind it is they're mimicking the music Matt likes, half for laughs and half because they're playing it well. And that's at least my take. And so I did enjoy this album. And this is a good example, by the way, that sometimes I'll roll my eyes with stuff, and the more Ween you listen to, Matt, you'll see some of the things that there's some songs that are for my ears,
it's interesting because I kind of knew that they're like,
but there's less
like,
of them in this. In fairness, there's less of them in this than I'm used to.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that they're like these goofballs that just make fun. And there's clearly some things on here. It's like, yeah, they're goofing around here, but like, and so in certain things, I'm just laughing here and there at certain things. But like overall, it was just like, damn, musically, this is so cool and interesting and stuff.
Well, it's because they're good.
Pervasive.
Right.
Yeah,
that's like like they're Frank Zappa. You know what I mean? Where like he
Yeah.
goofs around, and there's stuff even on those albums where I'm like, why is he writing songs about like shit? You know what I mean? It's like kind of there, but then also he's like virtuoso guitar at points, and syncretic of mixes, and I'm like, to some degree, Ween serves the same function that like Frank Zappa does, right?
Yeah.
They really do, in that they're music heads that listen to a little bit of everything. They're clearly high IQ guys who also write the lowest of lowbrow stuff at times. They clearly, you never know, if they fully like the genre that they're parodying with high levels of skill, or if they don't, right, which is part of like what they are, and they like lowbrow stuff at times, just like how Frank Zappa famously loved the Monkees, right? Like unironically.
Yes.
And he's like, and part of the joke, part of the reason he did is because he's like, they fucking sound just as good as many of these other bands that the critics say are so great. And it's like, I listen to their albums without knowing it. It's like, sounds just as good, right? So who the fuck cares? And I think there's a little bit of that energy in Ween too, that you could put on a Prince album and then a Beach Boys album, because there's a song that definitely sounds like a Beach Boys song on this one, and and probably like hardcore punk they're listening to. So so I like this one. I'm not gonna say I like this one more than I thought, because I knew that Ween's a mixed bag for me. I think I was, though, impressed that the vast majority of the songs on this album hit for me. So
just one thing, they often did get compared to Frank Zappa, but they didn't really like
Did they?
that comparison. They said that they were, influenced by Mothers of Invention, but they never really saw themselves as like Frank Zappa.
Well, not exactly like them, but the spirit is within them.
Yes. I think you really kind of distilled the band down to their essence really well, John, in that 3-part kind of breakdown. I'm well done on that. I'm of two minds of this album. Like, ultimately, I was won over by this album. I ended up really liking it. because my first listen, I was like, what is this shit? Like, I like borderline hated it. And then I listened to it again. I was like, God damn, these guys are talented, because they are like able to distill like the essence of genres down and like craft like really catchy songs in all of these different things. And so like the more I listened to this album, the more I liked it. I did pick up on the humor that they were going for, and kind of the parody nature of it. And that's kind of the part that I am struggling with. Like, I don't know it's hard to, like, when you make an album like that, is it really, it's hard to see if it's like really authentic or not, or if they're just like so talented that they are like making fun of everything. And I don't know how I feel about kind of the humor side of Ween, but I really can tell that they're talented, and they are able to construct songs and like go across genres within this album in a way that is like really entertaining.
Compared to something like Pure Guava, right, which was from 92, it would be an interesting listen for you guys to listen to that one, to juxtapose it, because that's the album I'm most familiar with, and that one, I would say, for both of your ears, would be a more polarizing listen.
Which one was that, John?
Pure Guava.
Yeah. I think that was one of their kind of...
From 1992.
I think one of the songs got played on MTV a lot from that album.
Yeah, Pushing the Little Daisies, and you should listen to that one and see what you think about it.
So in some ways, maybe them being like doing a concept album kind of put some like guardrails on them, or like kind of created some artificial rules for them to follow, and so maybe they were able to work within the parameters better, and like maybe that's also what worked for it more. For me, some things you guys didn't talk about on this album is like the clear like Pink Floyd inspired sounds that a lot of these songs had. I picked up on that a lot. Like, there is definitely like some 60s like British
do you think they like Pink
songs.
Floyd or hate Pink Floyd?
I think they really like Pink Floyd. I think ultimately, like, I came down on the side of them really liking all of the bands that they are kind of like homaging and parodying. I think Mutilated Lips, like you said, Matt, is really interesting, and I really ended up liking that song. Almost all of the songs have kind of like prog elements to them that work in really interesting ways for me. I've always been kind of, through our CTS journey, been kind of up and down on the prog stuff, and I think they kind of take the elements that I like and make it really work. There's a darkness to this album that I like as well, and Ocean Man just got stuck in my head. Like, it was so catchy. I don't know. I think ultimately I like the things that they are, a lot of the things that they are inspired by, and so I think ultimately I like kind of what they're doing here, and the album won me over in that way.
Ween has covered Echoes in entirety in a concert one time when people went to see them play, and they just played the album Echoes by Pink Floyd. I still don't know, though, if that means they like them or they just found it funny and it was a shit post. Because Ween, in some ways, is like shit posting as a band.
I know,
like,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of like what I'm still conflicted by. Like, it's like, and it's hard to judge them also on just this one album, which they like is their best, and didn't you say, Matt, this is the highest rated album on Best Ever Albums? So maybe it's all downhill from here, like you said, John.
Also, the track I'm listening to from this, I have to say, it sounds fucking fantastic. The Pink Floyd version they're doing, which is, they're doing it at John and Peter's, the small bar in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Maybe I'll one day take you there. But knowing how small that place is, that the song they're playing there, like, once again, you never could tell like if it's humor or not. So
so they're a mystery in that way, and also songs like Pink Eye on My Leg with the dogs barking and stuff. I was like, this is like Mario Paint version of like a fucking...
It's fucking terrible. It's just...
like...
And that's what I'm saying. Like, they didn't have as many of them, but there's two totally awful songs, mixed around the other thing, which I was expecting a much more 50-50 balance of that. So credit to them for weaning it in.
But yeah, it's weaning it in. But Yeah, ultimately there's a lot of good stuff on here, and apropos, if you like took songs out of this and like stuck them on like best of psychedelia or whatever, it would probably work, and you wouldn't know what they were about and kind of what their thing. And so yeah, it's a thumbs up for me, but and I did like it more than like They Might Be Giants. I think it's kind of a different lane than they can't be lumped in like nerd rock and like stuff like that. I don't think that's what they're about. And so I did like this a lot more. It's much more musical and enjoyable from that respect.
They've got more tricks to me than They Might Be Giants. They Might Be Giants got like 2 tricks, right? Yeah. And they're talented musicians, but they do their own thing. At the end of the day, it's like write these 2 cute by half songs. Like Ween's got more angles. But I go back to like, I consider them to be the shit posters of music. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's really what they, and to some, once again, I go back to that's the same lane that like a guy like Frank Zappa was in, right? Yeah. Like the same.
Well, they got this Pure Guava track listing. They have a song called "Flies on My Dick and Touch My Tutor."
Yes.
That's just.
And
that's very Frank Zappa. Yep.
That's what I said. They're lowbrow, and like if you were to listen to that, right? Like sometimes you're gonna listen to it and be like, "What am I listening to?" Like just. And their single is a perfect example of that. It's just like, how in God's name?
But such an interesting juxtaposition to be like that goofy and lowbrow, and then but also have the chops to pull off some of the music that they're able to pull off. It's like it's straddling both of those worlds and doing both very well. Like that's
it's
commendable.
Like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, that they can write all these stupid jokes, but then they can also write a Broadway musical like Pitch Perfect, right? Like with different stuff and do the precision of that puppet movie, but it's also ridiculous. It's and that, of course they like Ween because it totally makes sense. It's like totally on brand.
Yes, Mister, would you please help my pony? It's just, it's great. Yeah, I don't know. But I can appreciate both of those things. But yeah, you're right, John. I'd be lying if I was like picking up on all the jokes and
I'm
the whatever.
Shocked you didn't, because to me it's so obvious. Not even without knowing it. Just Josh? Did you get that from the beginning, or did it take a while when you researched them to get it?
Do you mean in terms of them like doing
like that? There's a vibe, like album? A vibe to them that it's that they're half winking at you while they're doing what they're doing, or no?
In certain parts, I did. Not as like a whole concept about this is like a play on all of prog
like that sea shanty like didn't strike you as much parody.
Oh no, it did, but it was more of more in isolation though, right? Like the first song, but some of the songs were more serious. I felt like than that. Like, well, that didn't seem like a joke at all. So and obviously, Waving My Dick in the Wind comes on, and I start, it's like
like it's gonna be all right is a pretty serious song in terms of what it's going for, but like the Blarney's Buckingham Green, I mean, I was laughing as that song was going on because it just sounds like, one of those long ass prog rock songs, and Ocean Man 2 is kind of Wanted to Leave is also funny at the end.
Even a song though like I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot is like this kind of straight ahead punk rock song that works really well for me. So I think when they dial back, I mean, based on the titles, you can tell kind of like what is serious or not. But I think
like She Wanted to Leave is Jethro Tull. If you listen to that song, it's like it could be a Jethro Tull song. It's exactly like it.
I think ultimately the music kind of won me over aspect of it, and I can set some of the humor aside on the back burner and not have to think about it too much. But thumbs up.
There we go.